In 1956, a Hungarian immigrant arrived in the UK, determined to make something of his life. A few years later, he set up an injection molding company, which he moved to Malta in 1971. His son, Andy Gatesy, took over Toly products in the late 80s, and in the next 2 decades, grew it to the multinational company it is today. Toly designs and manufactures packaging solutions for the global brand names in the beauty industry. The company manufactures out of Malta, South Korea, and China, and has sales subsidiaries in 7 countries. Toly employs close to 1,000 people globally and is the winner of numerous prestigious awards, including Exporter of the Year at the first edition of Trade Malta's International Business Awards. In our International Insights today, Andy Gatesy shares his experience in leading an international company with the challenges and opportunities that his company encountered over its 50-year-old journey.
Hello and welcome to yet another conversation with an international entrepreneur. This is an initiative of Trade Malta, supported by HSBC and in this case, Studio 7 as well. The idea, as we mentioned and announced before, is to introduce international entrepreneurs with companies that were born and grew out of Malta and today have international presence. And therefore, the content should be valuable both for companies that typically use Trade Malta services as well as students of international business and marketing. Today we are honored to have with us someone who grew his company to be probably one of the few proper multinationals based in Malta, Toly. Toly is a company with head office in Malta, with manufacturing plants in various places, sales subsidiaries and an operation which is a proper multinational anyway. So basically today, I'm really happy to have Andy Gatesy with us here. Andy, thanks for finding time to do this. First of all, we really look forward to having this conversation to try to reflect a little bit and get insight from your journey, which will be useful for other people or other companies, thinking of internationalizing and going to international journeys themselves. So thank you very much. How are you?
A pleasure. Good morning.
Great. Give us a bit of a sense, first of all, of how international the company is today.
Okay, we're a world leader in luxury packaging for the beauty industry. In terms of our manufacturing footprint, we have a factory here in Malta. It's actually the biggest factory in our group. We have manufacturing in China, in Shenzhen, across the border from Hong Kong, which is a joint venture. We have 2 plants in South Korea, one of them being a joint venture. And then we have partners around the world, so we can offer US manufacturing, we can offer manufacturing in South America. We have a sourcing model where we have partners that we can offer products that are not made in our own plants, so we can really offer global manufacturing. And then on the other side, we have the sales organization. So we have our own sales offices, really important to be close to your customers. So we have in the US, across the US, East Coast, West Coast, so in Los Angeles and in New York. We have in the UK, we have in France, we have a beautiful office on the Champs-Élysées in Paris, right in the center, of the fashion area in Paris. In Belgium, here in Malta, and then Hong Kong, China, and South Korea. So we're really able to support international customers around the world with their packaging requirements.
By being so present kind of globally. How many people do you employ in general?
It varies every day, but it's around 1,000 people, or just over 1,000 people around the world.
Okay. And the office in Malta acts as a head office, I guess?
Yes, today Malta is our head office, it's our corporate center, it's our largest factory, and we also have an integrated innovation center, which is really interesting for our customers.
I'd like to take you back, many years ago. You joined the company in 1986. The company was started by your father before that, but you've started an interesting journey back then. And you managed to attract, top-tier companies eventually, but I guess at first it wasn't like that. Can you tell us a little bit, what the main milestones were on a customer-facing front?
Okay, yeah. We actually started here in Malta. First year of manufacturing was 1971. So we're actually celebrating this year 50 years of manufacturing in Malta, which I think is a milestone for any company. I was just a kid. I was probably 5 years old when I came to Malta the first time. I went through a degree in engineering business school. And when I joined the business, as you said, around 85, 86, Toly was at that time really an English company with a satellite factory in Malta. All our customers were British. The Boots, Avon, their UK factory, Estée Lauder's UK factory, Rimmel, brands like that. And my dream was always to try and internationalize our business. I remember probably around 1986, we went over as a family to Paris for the weekend, and I went through Galeries Lafayette, and I saw all of these brands, these French brands. We didn't work with any of them, Chanel, Lancôme, Guerlain, Christian Dior, Clarins. And I said, we can work with nice brands. Why can't we work with these brands? So in those days, the world was always much bigger. It's not like it is today. So I said, well, how are we going to tackle that? We better start opening our own sales organizations. So we opened up in the US in 1987 with just a one-room office in New Jersey. Today, that's our biggest market, the US market. We did the same thing in Paris in 1989, then Benelux in 1994.
These were offices, sales offices?
These are sales offices. So we started, working with the brands. As I said, in those days, the world was very different. You had to work in their local currencies. You had to speak the language. You had to be physically present. Today in the digital world, and with the euro currency, for instance, a lot of that has changed. But I would say that was the start of our journey towards internationalization.
And you eventually managed to attract the global kind of names. How challenging was that? Because it's easy to say, like you said, you went to the Lafayette and you said, listen, why don't you work for these big names? But, between saying it and doing it, I guess there's a...
Yeah, no, it's a challenge. You need to have the credibility. I think we could prove that we could do good quality. We were competitive. Probably a milestone in our history was when we won our first contract with Chanel. And that was back in the late 1980s, around 1989. And they came to us, actually first in the US before their head office in France, and said, we've just relaunched our packaging, but we have this unique process called UV lacquering. And in the West, nobody had heard of that process. So I said, what is it? They said, go to Japan and find out. So I went with my technical director to Japan. We went and we found the equipment and the process, and we invested. In those days, it was $1 million investment. I remember it was the biggest investment we'd ever made. But it really changed our picture as a business, because suddenly, from being very good at replicating and almost Me Too technology, a bit like the Chinese, we had the state-of-the-art technology. There was nobody in the industry in 1990 that had injection molding and then lacquering at the same time. Then we started working with Chanel, and Chanel was one of the leading brands in the world, and it also helped us with our credibility. And from then we started working and adding more and more of the prestige brands, the legacy brands to our portfolio.
How important is it to work for a client like Chanel, who I would imagine is very demanding, and kind of very sophisticated for building your capabilities going forward?
Yeah, I think you learn from all of your customers. They push you all the time, new technologies, new systems, new processes. And I think we're in the beauty industry, but the beauty is becoming more and more closer to pharmaceuticals. So the standards are getting tougher, tougher standards for manufacturing all the time.
We spoke a bit before we started this, the recording, about the industry changing again in the last few years. I'd like you to relay that a little bit, of how you used to generate business in the past and how that is happening nowadays.
Yeah, the internet has really changed this business. I always say, if you were a new brand, let's say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and you wanted to launch your brand, how would you launch? How would you have access to consumers? You'd go to Sephora in France, you'd go to Boots in the UK, and they would say, you're a new brand, look at our shelves. We don't have space. We have enough brands. So it's very difficult to have access to consumers. But with the internet, that changed all of that. So suddenly, anybody today can launch a brand. And then if you have influencers or micro-influencers, you can scale up very fast. So if you look at the legacy brands, like Christian Dior, like Lancôme, it took them years and years and years to get to $50, $100, $500 million as a brand. Today, these new brands, we're working with brands like Fenty Beauty, Rihanna's brand. From 0 to 5 years, they probably exceeded $500 million as a business.
Because they have easier access to customers.
They have access to customers, And you know what happens on social media? Something gets liked, something gets spread. People, by word of mouth, they see the excitement of this brand, this product, and everybody wants to buy that online, and it just scales. Obviously, the COVID crisis has brought that another step further in terms of people's digital strategies.
Yeah. This change in the industry was probably an opportunity for you. I had an opportunity to come to visit your innovation center last week, and it's quite impressive. You're kind of co-producing solutions with the client. Has this kind of played a part, and is this kind of fitting with the latest trends in the industry, and why?
Yeah, for Toly, innovation is really the currency of the future. So innovation is really, really important. Every brand asked us for innovative solutions, but it was very difficult for a brand to be able to demonstrate that. Why? You go into a store and you've got an innovative applicator or dispensing. How do you demonstrate that? You can't. As people have moved online with these new brands particularly, they're posting videos all the time on Instagram, on YouTube, and you can demonstrate a benefit in innovation. So suddenly these new brands come to us, and all the innovation we've been doing, they're hungry for that, to be different, to be able to demonstrate. So they play directly into the strategy that we've created over the past few years.
And what's the offering with the Innovation Center? How does it work, really?
Well, we really encourage, pre-COVID, we encouraged customers to come and visit us, because when they came into the Innovation Center, they could sit down with us and partner with us on innovation. So they could have a challenge. Let's say they want to launch a new product. They want a solution for something. We can bring them in. And in our building in Malta, it's quite interesting because historically we're an industrial player. Yeah. But today when you walk into our offices as a manufacturing business, we have makeup artists. We have beauty bloggers. We had trends watchers. We're watching all the trends all the time. We have graphic designers. We're doing branding for our customers. We're a design studio. We have concept designers designing packaging for the retailers and the different brands, as well as the innovation engineers always applying for patents. But that's all supported by the technical and the operation strength and excellence of the business. So you can pull everything together in one center.
But really, the innovation, like you're saying, is really at the core of the solution. You therefore provide these clients who, as you mentioned, are now different from the big players of the past. They're kind of an up-and-coming breed of new clients in this industry.
Yeah, well, we have both. We have legacy brands. You can't forget the legacy brands. Okay. The Christian Dior's, the LVMHs, the L'Oreal's, the Coty's, the Estée Lauders. Why? Because these small brands that grow, eventually they're going to be flipped and sold, and probably one of the big groups is going to buy them.
Buy them eventually.
So they start off as independent, but then they get wrapped into a bigger structure. So you can't ignore one against the other.
Absolutely. Thinking of clients and how to kind of generate leads, one thing I also wanted to ask you is, looking back when you started internationalization in the late 80s, the way you used to do marketing and generate leads back then, and how has it changed? How is your organization different today?
It's completely different. I would say that a lot of the leads were probably generated from trade shows. We used to do 12 exhibitions a year around the world from, all over the world.
That's once a month?
Yeah. So some months nothing, other months 2 in a month.
Okay.
But that was from Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Monaco, Bologna, Paris, London, just to name some of them. So we were busy setting up stands, connecting with customers, bringing them here to Malta. The last 12, 18 months, all of that's changed because people haven't been able to travel. There's been no physical shows. So we've had to quickly move online. And in fact, one thing that we did was, how do you present innovation to your customers when you can't meet them physically? A real challenge.
That's interesting.
So our marketing team, led by Dorian, was very clever, and they said, we need to move into this virtual world. Let's build an audiovisual studio because the future is going to be video. And you've seen that online. When you start interacting with customers, you don't have to be physically there. It's moved to this online world. And to me, it's more powerful because when you go and visit, physically meet a customer, You know, you travel there, they might be traveling somewhere else, so half the people turn up, they have other meetings, they're busy. You know, you can't bring in your whole team, but online it's a different world. Most people are stuck at home. Even today, if you go to the US, most people are still working from home. So they're much more present, and you can bring people from around the world into this meeting, and then you can bring in video productions into this meeting, and it really makes a difference. So to me, it's very powerful.
But this means that a totally kind of new capability for a manufacturing company. This was it a bit of a switch in the way you operate?
Yeah, I would say we're not just a manufacturing company. We're really a business to support the brands. You know, the way that we work with our customers is completely different. And I guess that's a little bit our journey the last 50 years. You know, when I was a kid growing up, and people ask my father, who is Toly, he'd say, we're an engineering company. We build molds, we convert plastics. When he died in 1991 and I took over, we just invested in this lacquering process. So we were able to not just build molds and inject plastics, but we're able to create beautiful packaging. So I said, we need to become a packaging supplier, decorating and assembling. If I look back the last 5 years, as I just gave you the example, we've become a solutions provider to the beauty industry with all of these capabilities. And if I look forward again, it's going to change again. You've got to keep agile.
Where do you see it going in the next phase?
To me, it's about having customer-supplier partnerships. Okay, really being able to partner with your customers. Why? Because they want speed-to-market solutions, so they want to be faster. They want innovation, so you need to partner with them and do these innovation workshops and find ways to have a win-win approach into the market.
To do that, obviously, you rely a lot on relationship management. Is that something you do yourself only as CEO, or is it, you know, company-wide essentially? And how do you do that?
Relationships with our customers. No, it's not just me. We have, our sales offices and our sales teams. We have VPs of sales. I have 3 chief commercial officers. They're interacting all the time with the customers. But for me as a CEO, it's also important to meet customers. I think the most important things to me are to be present in the field with customers and with the people that you employ, because that's where you get the real market intel. How can you run a business? How can you look at where the industry is going, where the trends are going, if you're sitting in your little office and you're not communicating or integrating with the outside world? So to me, that's really important.
The COVID happened, 2 or so years ago, and we're still in it now. How has it affected, the marketing side, the sales side, and how has it changed the organization now that we're moving into hopefully a post-COVID reality?
Well, interestingly enough, our industry was always very resilient when it came to a crisis. I think Leonard Lauder, who was the chairman of Estée Lauder, coined it as the lipstick factor. He said, when the going gets tough, people go and buy a lipstick. But with COVID, that changed. Why? Because we're in the beauty business, so makeup, skincare, fragrance. And makeup is a big part of our business. But with the social distancing, makeup industry was hit. Makeup is a very social habit. People wear makeup when they get dressed up, when they go out for dinner, when they go out to party, when they go to the office. And of course, wearing of masks hasn't helped that as well, because half of your face is covered. So when they looked at lip products, foundations, products like that, has really suffered. It's, the eyes were still visible, so the eye makeup didn't suffer too much, but the makeup industry was hit. So obviously we've been challenged over the last 18 months. Our business has fallen. But I guess, despite the economic and the financial and the medical despair that's happened around the world, I would say for Toly, COVID has probably been one of the best things that has happened. Why was that? We could say we were busy fools. We spend our life traveling all the time, chasing business, chasing customers, either on a plane, customers coming to see us 2 or 3 times a week. And when COVID hit, all of that stopped. We couldn't travel on a plane, nobody would come visit us. So our whole perspective changed to be much more internal and focusing on systems, processes, structure, how we can change our business. And I believe in the last 12 months, we've changed the foundation, the structure of our business faster. It would have taken us 5 years in a normal period.
What kind of changes in practical terms?
I think focusing on strategy, focusing on rhythm, focusing on structures and processes, focusing on how we can be different.
One of the things I wanted to speak to you about, given that this is today, a multinational company with people working in different, parts of the world, communicating, etc. You've obviously worked with different teams, different management teams, etc. What have this taught you about, good leaders and good managers, like?
Good leaders and good managers. That's quite a big subject.
Debate.
I would say good leaders, they need to be passionate. Okay, really important. They need to be committed. They need to be able to communicate, but also they need to be able to listen. I always say that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so use your ears well and listen. Really important. So that's really what I would say around leadership.
And as you went along, apart from kind of what was happening on a customer-facing front, the company was always also changing in the sense that you've started. I guess the company was much simpler as an organization in the 80s. Today, it's again a multinational, so it's very, very sophisticated in that sense. What were kind of the main changes in building the right setup to be able to be what you are today?
Yeah, we grew pretty fast over a few years, and we got to around 50 million euros. And it was quite interesting because we got stuck at 50 million euros as a business. And a friend of mine who's a consultant came in, had a look at our business, and he says, well, you've moved from a flags to castle strategy. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, well, your father, you put flags everywhere. You put a flag in the US, flag in France, flag in Asia, China, Korea. And then you built castles, and you employed people to run those castles, and they were judged upon growing the business and profitability. But they did it independently. He said, and what happened is there's no aligned strategy, so you got stuck. He said, what we need to do, and that's what we did the last 5 years, is knock down the walls of the castles and instead build one big castle and have a much more aligned strategy. And in fact, that's another thing on leadership. People need to be aligned to the core values of the business. And so we've really changed the rhythm of our business. We've changed the alignment of the business and trying to move everybody in the same direction. Okay. And I think with some of these moves, with the change in the strategy, with the innovation center, from 2014 to 2018, we really grew our business. We doubled our business to hit 100 billion euros in sales.
Only in the last 2 years?
Yeah, 2014 to 2018. Obviously, COVID, we've been hit, so we now need to rebuild.
Aligning people with the strategy of the company when you have people all over the world. How do you do that in practice in terms of meetings, technologies? How do people, meet and what HR, elements do you have in place? That's what I mean.
Well, I think the main event of the year was always the best was the annual sales meeting in January, where everybody used to come together, all the cultures. I always say we're one family, but made up of different cultures, the Toly family around the world. People are really missing that face-to-face interaction. So what we've tried to do is create events online with the culture. So we do a lot of vulnerability-based sharing, which is quite interesting.
What's that?
So it's trying to be vulnerable with each other, to understand each other. If you look at yourself, you're like an onion, trying to peel back the skin of the onion to get to the core. Because I think management theory, certainly in the West, is if we can understand each other better, then we can work better together. If we understand what makes us tick. But that's very easy to do that in the US. That's easy to do it in some parts of Europe, the UK. As you get, to France, to Germany, people are much more closed. They don't like to be vulnerable. If you go to Asia, then it's almost impossible. You're taught in Asia, you must not talk about, your personal issues. You can't be vulnerable. So it's quite a challenge to be able to do that. But we have managed to create that kind of
the kind of positive climate in the company that allows for these kind of things. Even like you said, because you have so many different cultures. I guess even on a client front, you're dealing with people from different cultures, and then or are people in these multinationals in the cosmetic industry all kind of from the same culture in the end, or is it not the case?
No, there are some of the big groups that are multicultural. You might be on a conversation, you have people from the US, from Europe, from Asia in the same teams. But I would say that generally the cultures are different. You can start off in Japan where people are very precise, very detailed, very focused. Yeah, you can have a great meeting and you think you've sold something to them.
Okay.
They're just being polite. They'll never buy from you. You have no clue.
And this has happened to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember going to do a presentation for one of the big brands. There were 40 people. We were there for 2 hours. I did a fantastic presentation. I said to my Japanese partner, "We've got them hooked." And he said, "Oh, no, they're just being polite." He was right. They never bought anything from us. And then you go to Korea, you go to China, even across Asia. It's a bit like Europe. Every country is different.
Within Asia.
Within Asia and within Europe as well. I would say if you go to the brands in France, again, they're a bit more like the Japanese. They're very focused on specification, details, quality. And then if you go, some other parts of the world, a bit more relaxed, to be honest.
Okay. To be able to handle these cultural differences, I guess it's very important to be able to retain people. And not lose people as you go along, because obviously the organizational memory goes with them. What strategies do you have in place to try to kind of keep people committed all the time?
Yeah, we've done it. We do a lot, and we've done a lot. I think the advantage we have is being a privately owned organization with a long-term vision really helps us. During COVID, for instance, because I couldn't travel, one of the things we did internally, I said, I want to sit down either physically or virtually with all of our staff around the organization, at least on the staff level, not on the operator level. So that's probably 150, 160 people. And I asked them half an hour with my HR manager. We asked them 5 questions. What do you like about Toly? What do you dislike? How would you like your career to evolve? Do you see yourself as a manager or a specialist, which is an interesting question, and I can talk about that in a minute. What else can we do to make your job easy, and is there anything else you'd like to discuss? And the feedback we got from most people is that they like working at Toly because they feel that they're a person, not a number.
Okay.
In fact, I had somebody who came from another company, said, I was number 1274, that's who I was. Now I'm a person, I talk to the CEO, I interact. And I think that's really important, making people feel that they belong, but also making them feel that they can chart the future. We then mapped the talent across the organization.
Okay. Not just in Malta, therefore.
Around the whole organization, which was really interesting. Having gone through this interview, we mapped where we thought were the high potentials, high performers, must-keeps. Do we have people that are in the wrong seats in our organization?
Where the fit wasn't right.
Where the fit wasn't right. And that's where the question about are you a manager or a specialist was really interesting. Because in a traditional company, there was only one form of growth in an organization. Look at the sales side. You'd start off as a junior salesperson, become a senior salesperson, a key account manager, VP sales, chief commercial officer. Okay, you go up that way. But actually, once you become chief commercial officer, what do? You don't sell anymore. You manage sales teams. And we have people at the top that say that I really dislike managing people and sales teams. I want to be a salesperson. So they're a specialist. And what we're trying to do at Toly, we're trying to create a dual career path, okay? Which is really interesting because we want people who want to manage, but people who are specialists to specialize. And a specialist is important in engineering, in sales, in the creative world. What happens in the creative world, you might have your best designer becomes the manager of the department, but they don't have those skills to be managing.
Exactly.
Okay, so get a manager to manage and get your specialists to specialize, but treat them at the same level. Not one is better than the other. In fact, a specialist can actually be a higher position than a manager.
Okay, so it comes from kind of the organizational design. Is this what you design? These meetings you said you had to do the talent audit. I guess it took a lot of time, no, with a lot of people.
Yeah, it took us a few months.
A lot of CEO time, basically.
A lot of CEO time. But as I said, to me, the most fun I have is sitting down and talking with the people and with the customers, because that's when you really feel the fabric of the organization. You really get a feel for what's going on, without just sitting in your office and listening to other people. It's really interesting.
I want to take you just one step, for one question only, out of Toly per se, and into the industry in general. Toly has done this great transformation from a purely manufacturing company to a service provider, if you like, for the cosmetics industry. But obviously Malta still has, a manufacturing industry, of a traditional form, even though that is changing a lot. What are the challenges, you think, for manufacturing in Malta? What shall we do to retain a degree of manufacturing?
I would say, if I look at us, the challenge that we have is that we have no customers in Malta and we have no suppliers in Malta. So we have to bring in all the raw materials, we convert, and we have to export. So it's availability of resources, really important, raw material resources as well as human resources. So as Malta boomed the last few years, a lot of third-party nationals came in. There was availability of resources to help us fuel this growth. Obviously, with COVID, that's changed. So I think one of the concerns everybody has today is, do we have enough resources? How are we going to get the resources to be able to recover, to refuel our economy? So that's a challenge. I always say that don't look down upon ourselves as being Maltese. I think we've got fantastic creativity here on this island. And Toly's a great example. What we're doing is we're taking our entrepreneurial spirit and we're implanting it in the four corners of the world. We're not asking for people to help us. We're doing it ourselves. We're going out there. We're not asking governments to help us introduce to customers in California or in China. We're building structures, employing people, going out there, being pioneers and trying it ourselves. And I believe that anybody can do that. We're a small island here in Malta, but let's not look internally, let's look externally and say the world's our oyster. We're a nation of traders, we're a nation of entrepreneurs. Let's go and take that entrepreneurial spirit ourselves and do that the same.
Great. Back to Toly, I wanted to maybe reflect a little bit upon, this is a 50-year-old company approximately. I guess you had a number of, setbacks and failures in the past. What were the main ones and how did you deal with them before we kind of start wrapping up?
We had a lot of setbacks. I would say the first one was my father died when I was 27 years old. Okay, so I was pretty young to take over as chairman and CEO. And within a few months when he died, the UK exited the ERM, okay? And there was complete currency chaos. All the currencies went against us. And I said, we're never going to survive. Okay. Our business survived because the Malta pound was actually devalued by 10%. Okay. And that kind of saved our business. Then we've been through quite a few crises. We've been through 2 Gulf Wars. Why were the Gulf Wars a crisis? Because people stopped traveling. The beauty industry has a lot of confidence when people travel through airports, buy duty free. Maybe today it's changed a little bit because of the digital world, but in those days it was really important. The economic financial recession, I guess nearly 10 years ago.
In 2008 or
yeah, that really affected us. There was a knee-jerk reaction from customers. They thought the world was ending and nobody would buy anything, so they just turned off the taps, turned off the pipeline, and you had to find a way to survive. We invested in markets which didn't work out, like India. We had a big investment there.
What happened there, for example?
That's a long story. You need another half an hour for that story. But basically, we invested in India. We invested in South Korea. South Korea has been a fantastic success for us. India just didn't work out. I think the bureaucracy of dealing over there, really tough. The market probably wasn't big enough for what we were trying to offer. So that took a lot of management effort. As soon as we stopped that, refocused, we were able to set ourselves free. And again, the last crisis in COVID has been a crisis where I think for the first time we really managed this well by going in from a position of strength without panicking and finding the right way, keeping up the communication.
Yeah, because I guess you learn also as you go along to manage crisis in this sense. To be able to wrap up, as we said in the introduction, people watching us would either be, owner, manager of companies based in Malta, using Trade Malta services and therefore interested in internationalizing, or as students studying international business or marketing. What would be, your words of advice to them in general, in what you've experienced over the last many years, and how they should approach taking a company international?
I think first of all, dream big and aim high. Okay, love what you do, because you spend so much time at work doing what you do. If it's something you don't really like, then change. As I said earlier, we might be here in little Malta, but we're part of the European Union, which is a massive market. We're part of the world. So take our entrepreneur spirit and go out. The other thing I would say is work hard. Okay, nothing is easy. Life doesn't come easy without hard work. I think anybody that is successful really works hard. So I encourage people to focus, have discipline, work hard. And I'd say the final thing is about being agile. We just saw that the world changed very quickly. During the crisis, I said for Toly, life is not about waiting for the storm to pass, but instead it's learning how to dance in the rain.
Okay.
That's all about being agile, being different. I like to end maybe with Charles Darwin's quote that says, it's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. Instead, it's the one that's most adaptable to change.
Exactly.
And for Toly, for me, nothing is more important. You've got to dynamically steer the business. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You've got to find a ways to keep that agility, keep moving, keep looking forward.
So agility and adaptability are the two, wise words you'd leave us with. Andy, listen, thanks a lot for doing this. This has been really, really insightful and inspirational to, all those listening to us today. I remind you, this is an initiative of Trade Malta, the organization, the agency dedicated to helping companies in Malta find and succeed in international markets, always with the support of our strategic partners, HSBC, as well as Studio 7. I'd like to thank my colleagues, Richard, Christine, and others at Trade Malta, as well as colleagues at the university. And with that, I leave you with these 4. This is the last of our 4 interviews. So until we meet again, goodbye.
Thank you.